You found us. I'm so glad you did, but I am sorry that you had to. Who are we? I'll tell you what we're not. We're not old, we're not boring, and we're not giving up. So come on into our Widow Circle, where trauma meets humor, and we remind you that you can not only survive, but thrive. This is Every Widow Thing.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Every Widow Thing. I'm Holly, and I'm here with Whitney and Kira and Lacey and two very special guests.
Yay!
Janice and Vic Means. And we just met them a week ago.
How did you guys meet?
Well, we were, Whitney and I were working on the website at her house, and it was about 6:30 p.m. And I was like, Lionel Richie and is playing at the Moody tonight.
And Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Oh, and Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Oh, fun.
She's like, we're going.
I was like, what? It started in an hour, and I was like, why are we sitting on my couch? Let's see if there's still tickets available.
So Whitney got tickets and said, go home. I'll pick you up in an Uber in 30 minutes. And I said, we have to get there by Earth, Wind, and Fire if we're going. So we did.
Earth, Wind, and Fire was playing. We find our seats, and we sit down, and we look over, and there is Janice and Vic having a great time, enjoying the concert, and we just started talking with them.
And I was like, how many years have y'all been married?
And people ask that often, and he adds a year every year. And this coming week, it's going to be 120 years we've been married.
Well, you look amazing.
I know. But he was married 52, and I was married 54, and we're going to have our 14th wedding anniversary.
Typical answer to people, and it's asked very often, how long have y'all been married? And our typical answer is we've been married 120 years. So.
You'd be surprised how many times people say, how long have y'all been married? Lots of times coming off the dance floor, we dance a good bit, and people will stop us and say, like, they think we've been married 65 or 70 years, and we would have been. I married in 54, and he married in 1955.
Yeah. The fact that we just decided last minute to go to this concert, and then the seats that we get, we are sitting next to the two of you who you were so cute with each other. And then we were like, tell us your story, and come to find out you're a widow and a widower that have found each other and have been married for 14 years. And I just thought we had to have you on the podcast because it's so valuable to get different perspectives and kind of ask you some questions about your grief journeys and then how you guys came together. So that's the first question. How did you guys meet?
We knew
Each other's
spouses, and we didn't really know each other. We went to the same high school, but I was, when I was a senior in high school, she was only in the 8th grade, so didn't have an opportunity to know her. But her husband at that time had been in the same graduating class at Belton High School that I had been in. So he and I knew each other. At the time, very small high school. We had 55 in our graduating class, so obviously you knew everybody. So he and I were active with the politics of the class and that sort of thing, so we knew each other very well. And then by the same token, I did end up, when I was a senior, I ended up marrying a girl that was a freshman in high school. We dated for quite a while, but she and Janice then were in the same class at Belton High School 4 years later, so we knew each other's spouses very well and didn't know each other at all, except at times when we might be at a social occasion together or something like that.
The only time I ever saw him was at funeral visitations and funerals. He was at my husband's funeral. I was at his wife's funeral.
More to how we actually got together. Mm-hmm. There was a little thing in Belton
Little
that was
event.
going on that needed some attention, and Janice sort of got in the middle of it. And there were going to be some, it was sort of a reunion. There were going to be some
Mini reunion.
people coming from our era for this little reunion to celebrate. And Janice just put out on the internet or on the computer that does anybody, while the group is here, does anybody have any suggestions on what we might do? And so I answered her email with, I had a couple of guys that I walked with every day, and there's a great walk path in Belton. And, well, it walked right by the old teenage canteen that we all went to. That was all there was to do in Belton on Friday and Saturday night. And it also walked by the old municipal swimming pool where everybody learned to swim. So I just said, why don't we take a walk on the walk path that I just described to you? She emailed me back and said she thought that was a good idea. And she said, I'd like to see it. Can we meet?
Ah,
And I didn't
So-
think once. I didn't think
Wait.
once. Oh, we're both single.
She said she didn't think about we're both single. Did you?
Yeah, well, no.
You didn't either.
Not
You were
at the
just
time.
thinking,
We
let's just
just
meet up
didn't.
and go
We
and
just
walk.
Exactly.
Okay.
exactly.
You know,
Okay.
we weren't.
I'll add to that later. But
Okay, I had to know since she answered. I wanted to know.
But you know, the
We,
strangest thing to be with you girls that have all experienced being widowed. And that very day after we walked that path and we were just talking as hard as we could talk and realizing we had a lot in common and such. And before we decided to go by the cemetery. Our local cemetery means a lot to both of us because we have close relatives there and all. And that's where both of our spouses are buried. And we actually went to the cemetery that very first day and
Wow.
just talked and visited each of their graves. And so I thought that was very interesting, you know, to think that we talked openly about it. And see, we still do today. I mean, I talk about Peggy and we talk about Dub. We use their names frequently. And we're very comfortable with it. Very
Right.
I love
comfortable
that.
with it.
I think that's
And
that
that's
probably the real
important.
difference.
You know,
together,
that's
too.
important. We spent over 50 years. In fact, each one of us dated for several years before we married even.
Well,
we,
Well, I interrupted him, but I just was since she had responded to that, I had to know. So you called her up, and you were going to meet and go through that walk, and then
But
we
then
did the
it
walk,
went
and then after nothing, then we had the little reunion, and
when we had a good time.
yeah,
with
we had a real good
friends of
time.
Both of
And
ours.
but anyway, we had the reunion, and then nothing really happened after that. And then one afternoon, my telephone rang, and it was Janice, and she said I was at the grocery store. She and her husband belonged to a dance club in Temple for 50 years. And she said one of the old dance club members, I saw him at the grocery store, and they said, "Why don't you come to the Christmas dance this year?" So Janice decided to ask me if I would like to go with her to that Christmas dance. We had, while we were walking, we'd both talked about how much we enjoyed dancing.
I
So
love this so much.
I didn't give her an answer. I said, Janice, let me think about it. But the main thing I need to do is I need to talk to both of my daughters about this.
So at that time when she makes that phone call, you are aware that you're thinking, okay, this is going to be a date, and Janice is digging me,
Right.
and so
And I
I
need to
need
check
to.
with
when
my
we would have
Sure.
never done that when we were young.
Right.
Oh, that would have been very, very improper.
So when
But
you
when
made
you're
the call,
older,
Janice,
you don't have to be as proper.
right. When you made the call, was that your intention?
No, my story on it was that I had married very young. I graduated from high school a year early to get married. I had graduation Thursday night, wedding rehearsal Friday night and got married Saturday night, and had been very married and loved every minute of it. And I thought, oh, I'm footloose and fancy free, and I can do whatever I want to. I was totally secure. I have a good family. I have a good church family. I have a good home. I'm financially secure. You know, I just thought I'm going to run and play and go and do because I don't feel old at all. He agreed. He came back to me and said the girls said they thought it'd be okay.
I also have a son, but you don't
That
have to
doesn't
talk
matter.
to sons about
You got to get
Well,
your
quick
daughter.
question. You've been married 14, so how many years before you got married was this? Is it 2?
Oh, well, see, we actually...
9 or 10 months.
Ooh, I like
I know.
that.
I can't wait
Listen
hear
to
the
this. He
timeline.
picked me up that night. His eyes just went like this. I could tell I'd really impressed. And we went
She
to
had
that
on a beautiful
party.
dress. So.
And we went to that party and we had so much fun with people our age and all. And it was Christmas and it was happy time. And here we were I was about to spend my first Christmas alone.
Aw.
And he had the year before, he had just been widowed and he went to Wales for his first Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
And I was going to be at home for mine. But anyway, we went and it was just but he told me before when we got in the car, he said, I want you to know that I never plan to marry again.
Mhm.
And
I
I
was
said,
very
that's perfectly
serious
okay
about
with
that,
me.
and I
He
had
was sure.
thought a lot about it before I picked
He
her
was
up.
serious.
that
So
night.
why wouldn't you want to
So-
get married again? Why at that time did you think you didn't want to get married again?
Still grieving.
I don't know. That's a good question, and I can't answer it for you. But that's exactly how I did a lot of thinking before I picked her up that night. One reason I didn't think that my family would approve of that.
Yeah, I want to know what that phone call sounded like when you called up both of your daughters to say you were going on a date.
How old were your daughters at that time?
Well, 50s. They were in
Yeah.
their 50s. They
They were in their
50s or
50s.
close.
Were they on
Like
board? Were they
40s.
excited for you, or did they have reservations?
No.
I can't say that they were excited for me at all.
They were worried.
And it took one of them several years
Oh, wow.
to really accept Janice. It didn't cause any big problems or anything, but she just never did come around.
She was still grieving for her mother.
And
Yeah.
Sure.
Very,
my
very
other
close to
daughter
her.
came around fairly
Really
soon, and that's
good.
just the kind of person she lives here in Austin. It's just the kind of person she is. And my son did a whole lot better job than either one of my daughters of accepting her and bringing her into the family
That's interesting.
and all of that. So
I wondered if they were widows, like how we're widows, because I know my approach, how it will be when that happens in my family, because I am
See,
a
it
widow.
will be different.
Because I know what it's like to be alone,
mhm.
like really alone. And all of us four really do. I mean,
Oh,
have
we
been.
say that all
So
the time, girls.
someone who's partnered,
We
it's easy
say
for them to look in and be like, you shouldn't do that. But they don't know what it's like to wake up every day alone and go to bed every day alone and to live. So, and especially as we get older, we have less people to play with. I mean, so that's an
Sure.
interesting.
Sure. But you know what? He said when we got home but I responded that I wanted to run and play, but that in my golden years, I wanted to have someone that I hope someone would just come along and just really knock me off my feet. And I just wanted to have someone to spend my golden
And
years
that's what
with.
she told
And
me.
did
that's
they,
what I
did
told
they
her.
knock you
Well,
off?
well,
and
let me
say-
tell you what I
And
told her.
so,
When
when-
we got home from the dance, we had such a good time. And I said, Janice, I've had such a good time. And I said, maybe we can do this again, and maybe I can do it before that guy comes along and sweeps you off your feet.
and do you know, he was at my
That's so
house nearly every
sweet.
day after that.
That's
And we've just
so
had
awesome.
such a good relationship. But literally,
No, I
it
was
wasn't
ready
but just a
for some
couple
company.
of months.
Of
And I
course you were.
said to my son and daughter-in-law, who I'm very, very close to, And I said, I got to tell y'all. Oh, I invited them all over for dinner. I invited him over and Steve and Donna. And so then I had dinner with them one night. And I said, I got to tell y'all, I'm afraid our hearts are getting involved. And they said, oh, Mama, we already knew that. Said we could tell. And I said, really? I thought we were being very discreet. But they could tell. But then he came to me and said, I have something I want to talk about. And I said, what's that? And he said, houses and churches. And I said,
Money.
well, you didn't say money the first time, though. You didn't say money because that's something we want
How
to
long?
consider. And we
How
want to
long
tell
were
you.
y'all dating before he told you?
Oh, about
houses
2 months.
and
About
okay.
2 months. And I said, well, we don't need to talk about those because we could go to church together every time when we want to.
We
And-
both owned our own home.
And
at
we
the
both
time.
go. We both have good churches and have been faithful members for years. And so I said we can go to church together anytime we want to. And you're not ever going to get married, so houses don't count. Houses don't count. And he said, "Well, I'm afraid I'm about to change my mind." And said, "I want to make sure there's no big boulders in the road. We can get over those little ones, but we want to make sure." And he added finances to it because that's something really big
It is very
when you
big.
decide to make another move. And it's according to where you are in your life and how old your children are or how you've invested or what you do. And everyone's heard of prenups and it sounds like you don't trust each other, but that's not true. You really need to list everything that's there and decide how you plan to do it. And you can change your mind anytime you want to later
So
on.
you
if
guys
want
did
to.
have a prenup.
And so we did a prenup.
Well,
We
let me
did do
ask you this.
prenup.
Did that help? Like, I think my dad and I were talking about this about another couple that's a family friend. And they said it almost helped that the prenup was in place because the kids then weren't worried about there being anything
Yes.
messy.
We had
That
it
it kind of
all
cleared
under
the way for just
control.
love to come along
Had
and
it
not
all
worry
under
about all of that
control.
stuff. So in a
And
way, that kind of made things
And we've
better.
changed. You can change your mind anytime you want to on some of those things. But it's very important to do that, to just list what you have and what you want done with it or what.
She's
You know,
looking at you
and
here.
She is looking at
even
me.
when you're in your
She's looking at you.
40s, or 50s, that's a very important thing to think about. But houses and churches and finances are the biggest.
Right.
They are the biggest. But the family is number one, really. See, that's the story with all of your children. You don't want someone to come in and take your husband's place with your children.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they can't love them and respect them and and expect their respect and all. And you want to please your children. You want your children to be happy. And we survived it because
Yeah,
you
how did you-
cannot let that rule your head and your life and all because they have their own lives
Yeah.
and they're going to raise their children and their grandchildren and all. And you don't have to marry someone that's just exactly like your spouse or anything. You don't want to expect them to be identical. And we're not. We're not. Either one of us are not. I thought he was way too conservative for me. And so- because he dressed so nice.
Until I got her out on the dance
That's
floor.
right.
I just realized you're not so conservative after
Do you
all.
know, actually,
That's what I was picking up on.
we were with friends. We were having dinner at the dance. And the very first time he said, "Would you like to dance?" And he kind of offered me his hand. And I took hold of his hand and we got on the dance floor. And it was like we'd danced together all our lives. It was
I
just like
love
we danced
that.
together all our lives.
That's
But what you've already talked about, it's so true. The days you say busy, busy, busy during the day, and then there's just lots and lots and lots of lonely nights. And your children are going to leave, and they're going to have homes of their own, and they're going to have children, and they're going to have grandchildren, and all that. And you have to think of yourself.
We've continued to, at our tender age, we've continued to do everything. We drive. Most of our friends don't drive anymore, and especially they don't drive at night. and we don't have any problem doing that.
Either one of
And,
us.
That is
Both of us.
amazing.
You were at the Moody
It is,
Theater.
from the health standpoint, I think that's one thing that's helped us. We should have brought our calendar that you could look at and see
I
what
might
we
feel like I was
It would
how
boring.
much
blow
we
your
have to
mind.
do every
So
day,
it's
and we
this
just
big
we don't turn
every
anything
day.
down. We just do it.
What would you
I love
say?
that.
Because you did find each other fairly quickly, and then went straight into a serious relationship. First of all, how did the first "I love you" and the first kiss go?
Well, the first kiss was quick, early.
On the dance floor or no?
No.
No. After I got her
Private.
home.
That's good. And
How
so
was that after all of these
Yeah,
And
was
it was
that
so
awkward?
funny because I have some really, really close girlfriends that we've been friends for many, many, many years, and we're extremely close, like sisters. And one of them called me and said, "Okay, did he kiss you?" And I said, "Yes."
Some things don't change.
Yeah, exactly.
And she asked me more about it, and I said, "He'll be back for more." And see, we had neither one dated. At all.
Right.
At all. So
At
this is your
all.
first
This
kiss in
was-
how many years with someone new?
Well, it was just 2 years, really. See,
No,
we
but
were
you've
not
been
wed up for
married.
long.
We were
We-
both not married. That we lost him about 2 years before.
But you were married for how long again?
I was married 54 years, and he was married 52.
So
But you're
that's-
kissing
and-
someone new.
That has
And
to be so
literally
50-something
strange.
years.
Like after that many years kissing somebody
It
new.
is.
Oh, I know it.
Yeah.
I know it. It was a new experience. Well, think about having sex, though, after all those years. I guess we can say anything we
Oh,
want to.
yeah.
She's
No,
talking our game now.
But there's so many things. I mean, just like undressing in front of each other or things like that when you've lived with the same person all your life, and you're elderly. And like I said, I thought he was more conservative than me.
You
And
got to watch
such,
out
and
for those types.
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
understand. Mhm.
Did you
No,
go buy
I was
new
thinking,
lingerie?
Yeah, that's a good question. Did you buy new lingerie? All of
Yes,
that?
kind of. Yes.
Good question, Holly.
We didn't really need it.
I was
Yeah.
going to ask it, but I'm glad you did.
And
one
keep
of
in
my
mind, girls, we were in our 70s.
Right.
We were in our 70s.
Go ahead, Vic. I
And
want to
it
hear.
was just
Yeah, because
like,
I remember
oh my
Whitney
gosh.
saying whoever she gets is not going to get to see her 19-year-old bum because she met her husband at 19. So did Holly.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? You're right. Now we have to think about that. Like as we get older. So
Yeah,
You
those
do.
bodies that you had when you first got married
yeah.
are very different now. But when you are
But
in
y'all at
love
least
with
knew each
someone,
other,
it
though,
doesn't
Deb.
bother
Doesn't
you.
matter. It doesn't matter.
But I had the thought. I thought, how's he going to be to get in bed with a 72-year-old woman?
Right. You weren't thinking about how old you were. and
But
He
there's
How was it?
so many
He
things.
didn't care
to
what she
say
had
there.
on. He was like,
And we-
take it off.
Literally, it was like we were teenagers. We were just
Oh.
absolutely so madly in love, and it was love. It
Mhm.
was really, really,
And so
really
when
love.
that was my
That
next
is just-
question. When did you first say I love you to each other, and did you have to really think about it? Was there any guilt around it? Because I think a lot of widows and widowers, even though they're feeling something, their mind gets in the way and they start to feel like in some way they're betraying their,
And that's
their
not
spouse.
true. We want to really, really stress while we're here that it doesn't mean you loved your spouse any less. It
And in the
doesn't
vows
mean
it says until death do you part.
till
So even
death
in
do
God's
you
eyes.
part. And you
it
all
is
have
okay.
that closure, and we had that closure.
Did you feel it though? Like Vic, did you feel that closure, or did you struggle with it a little bit before you told Janice that you loved her or that you would marry her?
No, I didn't struggle with it. It was there,
There.
and that's what I wanted, and so.
He's the one that changed his mind quick.
Yeah.
He said,
But I
leave
can't,
him.
truthfully, I can't remember the first time I said to her, "I love you," but and it just sort of
Well, you just say,
sort of happened. The feeling happened before the conversation did, I think. So
Mhm.
And were you concerned at all? Because I know as you get older, your children try to switch on you and become your parent. Did you feel that you had to manage that relationship? I feel like, Vic, maybe you did a little bit more with your daughters.
True.
Did that keep you from doing anything in the beginning, or you talk about that a
really.
little bit?
It didn't
Not
keep
at
us
all.
from doing anything, but there was that feeling there and I felt it and I knew it, and there wasn't really anything I could do about it. And I didn't sit down with either one of my daughters and talk seriously about it. I just wanted it to just happen. And Janice, in her personality, and I knew that she could do it and would do it, and that's what she's done. She's brought those two girls into her, and there's a completely different feeling. All these grandchildren that really come on board they were really on board with Peggy and I, but they really come on board with Janice, and we.
They're all ours. They're not
don't
his
know.
and mine.
I'm not the one that's getting married, but I have a question about it. What are some tips, or what are some things that maybe you realized after with this second marriage that you didn't realize, or something that would be helpful for Kira or any of us as we, hopefully get to a second marriage?
You think about it, and I'm going to go ahead and say that you need to realize that neither of you should expect them to be exactly like your other one. Don't think, oh, this isn't the way I wanted it, and all. Be ready for change. Be ready for change, because that's so important. It's not to get set in your ways.
That's good advice.
And see, you all
That's
have
really
all
good
been
advice for
you all
me.
have all been single for a good while, so don't be afraid of changing the side of the bed or the closet.
hilarious,
Think
yeah.
of the closet and all of those things.
I'm trying to make some room. He has a couple drawers right now, but that's about it.
That should be enough.
But
for
I
me.
need
see,
to get away with
That's
get
all
rid of
he
a few
needs.
things.
That's it. That should be it. We have to have the closet.
You've got to think about those things, though, as far as grief is concerned. Of course, you grieve and your life is just turned upside down, but you have to look at the positive things. Girls, I just can't tell you how important it is as you get older, that you think positive every day. And you have to think of all those positive things. But my husband had told me for years, and many times I had saved him from death earlier, and he would tell me that, I don't care if I wish you wouldn't have a date for the funeral, but I sure want you to get out and be happy afterwards. He wanted me to have a new life.
Sure.
So we didn't ever feel guilty or anything in dating. It's healthy though to talk. And I think have so much respect for you girls for putting this out for other young widows, because you all have so much to offer, and I want to encourage you all to think positive and fall in love. But be careful in getting there. And yes, there's
Can we
things-
have you vet them for us? I get a feeling you did all right.
maybe I ought to
So
approve
think
them
positive,
for you.
get a
Maybe-
prenup.
Well, let me ask you a question. So, did anybody who did you talk to before you decided to get married? Did you talk to a therapist, your preacher?
We had a preacher friend that is just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man, and he's gone on to glory now. But he had been in the business for 50 years, and everyone in the whole community loved him forever. And he was going to perform our wedding, and so we decided we had to have lunch together for counseling. And he said, when we sat down, he said, "Okay, now you all need to counsel me."
What about, because you did come from a small town, and so it sounds like everybody knows everybody. Was there any whisperings, like where people were appalled, or was there a scandal?
Not that
Or
we-
was
not that
everyone
we know
happy?
of. Not that we know of.
Were there some jealous other ladies or jealous other men? Maybe
There was one condition that couple that he and Peggy had owned a house in Red River, New Mexico, for over 30 years, and her husband was his very, very, very best friend, and he had died, and she was widowed, and so everybody in town thought he had married Jane, of course.
But you hadn't even gone out on a date.
Because the property was already linked.
Right.
It would have been very convenient, I can tell you.
I love Jane, but I had thought this is not the lady that I'd like to marry.
Right.
Yeah.
How were you doing, Vic, in your grief before meeting Janice? What were you doing? What were you doing during that time to keep your grief in check, or did you need to even do that? Did you kind of feel fine?
My grief, of course, was there, but as I mentioned, I was not looking for someone to marry, and made it very clear to her that, you know, even though we had a good time dancing tonight, I don't want to be married again. I thought I need to, before we had the date, I thought that's what I'm going to say. That's what I need to say, because that's how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And it just didn't take very long for that to...
For Janice to turn it
for that
around.
she did. She turned it completely around. But we decided we wanted to have a fairly
Big wedding.
nice wedding.
Mm-hmm.
So our guest list was 440 people.
Oh, wow.
These
Smaller
were-
Toned it down from about 600.
So we sat down at her table in her kitchen when we were doing all this, and we finally just said,
Oh, we already addressed the invitations. We had them stamped, and we had
did.
replies stamped, and we had
and we said,
Ready.
what are we
we doing?
We can't do this. Janice just put her head down on the table, and we said, what are we
He said,
doing?
I didn't know she'd do something like that. I just laid my head down.
And so
Horrified.
we boiled that 440 down to 140 people. And I had hired an orchestra to play so we could all dance and everything else. And we were feeding everybody. I mean, it was a big deal. And everybody in town, I'm sure, really wanted to come. But we pared all that down.
I have a question. When you were talking earlier about having a conversation about houses and churches, you both had your own house. What happened? And those
That's a good
houses you had
question.
Good
lived in
question.
your whole married life, I'm assuming, or not whole, but for a very long time.
Oh, there's a real
What
story to
happened?
that.
Tell me
Yeah.
that
Her-
story.
Her home in Temple, and she had lived there for
42 years.
42 years.
Wow.
And I hadn't lived in
Very
mine in
comfortable.
Salado quite that long. Janice's house was ideally located for
That's better.
somebody old or getting old. We kept her house
For 2 years.
for 2
We lived
years.
in both of them.
I think that's a
But
great
he's
idea.
leaving out something important about the house still is I did have a very comfortable house, and it would have been good for elderly, but we didn't feel elderly. He built, literally hammered the
Oh, the
nails
temple
in the
house.
house we live in.
Oh, Salito.
And it's built to look old, and it's just 26 years old, but he built it to look old, and he hammered every nail. He and a laborer, it took him 2.5 years to build
Wow.
it, and it's lovely, and it's not anything at all like how I had lived. So I changed completely, but we thought we'd keep them both. Decided that was totally ridiculous. How much insurance
Right.
and maintenance
Property
on that, and
taxes
the
and-
electricity, all the it was just totally ridiculous.
So how did you mix the two houses together in the sense of like, did you just move in and everything that Peggy had is now what you're living in, or did you bring in?
We've
some of your stuff?
redone some of it. I've, changed some rugs or something. She had very good taste, I might add.
And we brought
We've had
a few things.
We've
to-
bought some things.
Mhm.
But I
From the
didn't
other
take
house.
anything. See, we lived in both houses. I didn't take towels or anything.
Right.
It's
thinking
just
earlier
different.
about the chance of the four of us meeting
Yes.
that night at the concert. I have wanted to see Lionel Richie all of my life. I love his music. And my son just mentioned we've got, Sheila and I have tickets to Lionel Richie's concert in Austin in 2 weeks. So he got our tickets. So we just sort of accidentally got our tickets.
Yeah, I
Oh,
really
but,
believe my whole belief system revolves around the idea that God, life, the universe is putting things together for us always, and us all sitting together proves that. The two of you and how easily, not that you didn't have to work at it some, but how you came into each other's lives and how it's working so perfectly. I kind of have to believe that your spouses up there were helping create what's happening down here. Do you guys feel them? Do you get signs from them? Do you believe in that kind of stuff?
I don't really believe in that kind of stuff, but I'm sure you're right. And the situation of a marriage, whether it was a long time ago or whether it's now, involves so much give and take. And I don't enjoy everything that she wants to do, and she doesn't enjoy everything that I want to do. We are involved in a lot of things, and we're invited to a lot of things that I'd rather not. Some of them I'd rather not go to.
We believe in staying active, and you girls think of that when you get old. Don't ever just stop and say, I'm old and I can't do this or can't do that. Do it as long as you can, and you'll meet people then.
Well, I love-
Somebody out there to sweep you off your feet.
Yeah, I know you're talking about moving in the sense of as you get older, but I think in your grief, it's a great lesson. You have to move, or you will lose your life because you start to sit in your grief and you don't put yourself out there, and then that just perpetuates more grief. Aren't you so glad you both jumped in?
Oh, my goodness sakes, we talk about it all the time.
We try to imagine how life would have been the last 14 years.
Yeah.
And we would encourage you all to
Had she not called me to go on that
I
little,
know.
if that hadn't happened, I don't
See,
know.
ladies,
nothing
maybe we
else
should
would
take. Maybe we have to be the ones to
many
ask
May
them
have
out.
to.
lonely nights you all will
And that's-
have.
that-
Yeah, it's worth
Something
it.
again.
Oh, I have a question. So, give us that advice. You, as a male, do you like for a girl to call you and ask you to go out, like she did? I mean, good for her, because you said it wouldn't have happened otherwise. How did that make you feel?
It made me feel good, actually.
We left to Jitterbug, and the very first night and I thought he was so conservative. And the very first night we had that nice dance that I called and asked him to go to, and we were dancing, and he said, "Want me to go through my legs?"
Oh my
I said, I
God.
usually
was
throw my
teasing.
girl between my legs. And so we were dancing, and then all of a sudden I said, okay, are you ready? And I don't throw them between my
But you
legs.
don't.
It would have been appropriate in our younger days.
I love it. We just want to thank you guys for coming and saying yes to this, and then making the drive out here and sharing your story. I do feel inspired by you guys and how you're
Absolutely.
living your life. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well,
This
it's
was
a
so
pleasure.
inspiring.
Thank,
Meet all
thank you
of
for
you all.
inviting us. We've enjoyed it so
Yeah.
much.
When they asked us if we would come, I said, well, first you've got to tell us what a podcast is.